back then, not even our colleagues, the vast majority of our colleagues, did not believe that you could do seasonal climate prediction, and that all the Northern Hemisphere meteorologists agreed there is no El Niño. And by that stage, Australia had been in a drought since about January 1982, and pressures were enormously high.
El Niño, or the most extreme El Niño in our lifetime. No one had ever seen anything like this 82, 83 El Niño.
I was bemoaning the fact that these people were clearly wrong. Just using simple statistical relationships, we could forecast that it was going to continue to be dry through the Australian spring and into at least early summer with considerable confidence. Meteorologists at the time just refused to accept that we could actually make a forecast of anything more than about a week ahead, because that was what we did with weather, and they couldn't understand the difference between weather and climate. And now the big change, of course, is that everyone in the street knows about El Niño.
La Niña tends to double the chance of having a wet spring, and an El Niño to double the chances of having a dry spring.
So John suggested that we needed to document this, the lag relationships relating, say, winter indices of the Southern Oscillation and subsequent rainfall in spring and summer. And my comment was, well, we know all of that. We don't need to document it. Everybody knows that. And John said, well, they don't, so we have to write it down. No one's ever going to be interested in this paper because we all know it, so it will never be cited. And it's your idea, and because it's never going to be cited, you can be lead author.
And I did most of the work too, just...
Not true.
Oh, I always cited them. I always cited them, for sure. McBride and Nicholls, 1983, I would say it's a seminal paper in Australia's impact of ENSO and rainfall. So we consider really a mark in our knowledge of the ENSO and Australian rainfall. Neville is a fantastic researcher, and John as well. They advanced what we know about ENSO in Australia.
For many years afterwards, it ended up as our both of us, our most cited paper for a long time. And so I was totally wrong.
We had also studies that came before that paper, but most of the studies tried to just look into these relationships at a local scale or stations, because we didn't have much data at that time, right? I think this paper was the first one that came as looking at Australia as a whole, and it's like a really large and complete picture of the El Niño Southern Oscillation and how it affects Australian rainfall with the data that they had at that time.
I think this was the first paper that actually tried to show how these teleconnections could be used to enhance the predictability of Australian climate. So it's something they kind of broached in this paper. So it wasn't only detailing the impacts, but kind of showed how seasonal forecasting may actually be possible.
Because the paper also talks about the seasonality, really identifies that Austral Spring is a key season for those impacts on rainfall. Even talks about decadal variability in a time that there was no data, basically, not no data, but it's really limited. How can we talk about decadal variability and with the data that we had at that time?
Life was different back then, wasn't it, John? For researchers, we could do whatever we wanted in those days, and no one checked. People sometimes don't realise how enormous the change in our science has been.
It was so laborious. There was no digitised data. It was weather maps, and we'd be poring over these microfilmed weather maps, pulling out the observation for substation for each day and making a time series by hand.
Hundreds of cards in a tray like that, and the scientist would have to carry them from what floor we were on the ninth floor or whatever, down to the ground floor where our computer was, give them to an operator who would feed this pile of cards into the computer and hope that no one got them out of order, because the thought of putting them back in order was horrific. And then you'd wait 24 hours and the scientists would get the sort of results the next day. 20 years later, I could write that same paper in an afternoon, and now I could write the same paper in about an hour. The second thing is the enormous change in the amount of observations, the amount that are digitised and easily accessible, and the amount that are available in real time for climate, for monitoring the oceans, for instance.
So we only just started forming an observational network of the tropical Pacific after the 1982-83 El Niño event. Before that kind of time, we were relying on satellites had just been launched, and we were relying on satellites to give us sea surface temperatures. But the El Niño event that occurred in 1982-83 wasn't seen by the satellites because there was a volcanic eruption that occurred at the same time, so it kind of made everything look cooler, so it was missed. So now they have, or since the mid-1980s, they have this series of moorings that exist across the tropical Pacific. So kind of like if you have kind of these instruments that are tethered to the bottom of the ocean, and they kind of measure the upper ocean and the surface, and there's kind of like rows of them that cross the Pacific, and they kind of are connected and kind of radio live data back that we can look at. Now we've kind of got these things in the ocean called an Argo float, which just drift around with the currents, and they pop up to the surface, they radio back their information, then they drop down to 2,000 meters, then they come up to 1,000 meters, and they come back to the surface. So they have this 10-day cycle where they're kind of looking at the data in the upper, or looking at the ocean in that upper 2,000 meters. So now they started in the kind of the early 2000s. Now we have a lot of coverage from those as well as kind of more and more satellites.
There are uncertainties on how the El Niño Southern Oscillation will change in the future.
Is there going to be a substantial change to the way the El Niño Southern Oscillation operates as the world warms? How does this stuff up your prediction methods, and how does it actually screw up the El Niño Southern Oscillation mechanisms themselves? So
with the tools that we have, we think that the teleconnections will strengthen in the future. But we really need to understand if the tropical Pacific mean state first will continue cooling, or it will become more of a El Niño-like mean state, warming in the Eastern Pacific, because that affects the way that El Niño and La Niña manifest as well, and that has an impact for Australia.
Well, we also appreciate this opportunity just to remind our younger colleagues that we're not dead. So thank you very much.